Back to our top story, concerns over Joe Biden's campaign after his debate performance last week. Earlier this afternoon, Congressman Lloyd Doggett of Texas became the first sitting Democrat to call for Biden to step aside. And a House Democratic lawmaker just told me moments ago that there's, quote, a large and increasing group of House Democrats concerned about the president's candidacy, representing a broad swath of the caucus. We are deeply concerned about his trajectory and his ability to win.
A Democratic representative from Minnesota is now calling on President Joe Biden to drop out of the presidential race. Today, Angie Craig released a statement calling for Biden to step aside.
Meaning to step aside, but we will be increasingly vocal about our concerns if he doesn't.
Craig's comments come hours after President Biden appeared in a 22-minute interview with ABC News last night. Biden reiterated his intent to stay in the race, saying that it would take an act of God to drop out.
If the Lord Almighty came down and said, Joe, get out of the race, I'll get out of the race. The Lord Almighty's not coming down.
President Biden went to Mass Saturday, a day after saying only a heavenly power could convince him to drop out of the race.
I mean, these hypotheticals, George,
But it's not that hypothetical anymore. I grant that they have not requested the meeting, but it's been reported.
I've met with them. I've met with a lot of these people. I've talked with them regularly. I had an hour conversation with Hakeem.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jefferies is set to hold a virtual meeting with top House Committee Democrats tomorrow. He's been listening to members of his party all week as he tries to stem a tide of defections against the president.
Let's go to a clip, one particular point that is particularly poignant. Let's listen.
If you are told reliably from your allies, from your friends and supporters in the Democratic Party, in the House and the Senate, that they're concerned you're going to lose the House and the Senate if you stay in, what will you do?
I'm not going to answer that question. It's not going to happen.
Another House Democrat is joining the mounting calls for President Biden to leave the presidential race.
Democratic voters are wrestling with the questions, too.
I think it's time for another leader to take over.
So far, no Democratic senator has publicly called for the president to drop out, something that could change.
And if he does step aside, how does the process unfold? Should the president pass the baton to Vice President Harris?
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
We already have a nigger mayor. We don't need any more nigger big shots.
Can you imagine the President of the United States saying that? The whole world heard it.
Sleepy Joe worse than his vice presidential pick. I brilliantly said he'll never pick Kamala because he got called a racist. He got called xenophobic, which he didn't know what that meant. He got called all sorts of things, right?